Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Fighter Heart podcast. I'm sitting here with Lindy today. Thanks for taking the time, Lindy.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Like I said before, we like to get into it pretty quick around here. So, if you could give us a little, background story about who you are, maybe a little bit where you grew up, and then get into your Fighter Heart story.
My name is Lindi Marcusen, and I was born and raised in Spokane, Washington, and I grew up not being able to sit still or right side up, and so I competed in gymnastics for about 14 years and completely loved to move and to just discover who I was as a person through movement. And I went to college. I graduated with a graphic design degree, and I met my college sweetheart who turned into my husband. And 13 days after we got married, I was in a horrific car accident and I had numerous injuries. But the one that is most obvious now is the fact that I lost my leg. And that journey has led me in many different ways. But currently, just this last year, I competed in the 2024 Paralympic Games in track and field.
Oh, sweet. So let's rewind a little bit. So you said you grew up not being able to sit still. Like, was there like some sort of disease, or was it kind of like an ADD kind of thing, or
So it's funny, I got diagnosed with ADD when I was 21 years old.
Okay.
And my life made so much more sense after that diagnosis. But I was offended about it at first. But now just like it's a superpower when you can contain it, and it's a double-edged sword. So
Yeah. So you said when you were 21, after you graduated, you got in the car accident?
yeah, so I graduated with my undergrad when I was 20, and then I got married right like pretty soon right after,
Hmm.
and that was September 1st. And I we got back from our honeymoon, and I was driving. I moved in with my husband too. We didn't live together prior to getting married, and I was on my way to write wedding thank you notes, and there was a mechanical failure on my car that caused me to go into oncoming traffic on a two-lane highway.
Oh,
And so
geez.
I was hit by a Ford F-350 hauling a backhoe and a Honda Accord.
Geez, head on.
Yes.
What do you remember about the accident? Did you stay conscious?
I have little snippets of memory, but I remember being just having zero control of my car and knowing that like I was in trouble. And I remember that like that moment right before I got hit, and it just was like this is it. Like I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And then I have these, like little memories like through like waking just being so confused like where I was and what was going on, and little bits of memories when I was in the hospital because I was in the hospital for 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Wow.
and and I have a traumatic head injury. I have a
Hmm.
traumatic brain injury, so that impacted everything. Like I have a severe diffuse axonal head injury, and like that's the type of head injury that you either die from or you're left in a vegetative state. And so my family didn't really know. I had lots of internal injuries. My other leg was smashed. And so I had numerous surgeries on my what's called a sound side. So the full leg that I have. I have a rod through my femur, I have a rod through my tibia, and I have screws through my pelvis. And I just kept, I just had so many injuries and I just kept bleeding out, and they couldn't figure out like where it was coming from because I had a lot of internal injuries as well. And there was a point where my family thought it was like they didn't want to play God. And so they were like, you know what? My family's in medicine. You know, medicine goes so far, and then you gotta put it into God, the universe's whatever higher power you believe in hands, and then kind of just trust that things will happen, like things trust that you can accept what will happen.
Hmm.
And I, my siblings flew in to say their goodbyes. And the next day, I was awake eating peaches.
What?
And yes, I don't remember that part, but it was just like my mom's like, okay, like what do you want to do? Like well, they were trying to communicate with me about when you have a head injury, like the best description I can give is that you're a lion and you've not had anything to eat in months and you're just in a cage, and so you're agitated, you're angry, you're aggressive, and that's exactly what like a head injury is. And so I said hashtag pink, and my family decoded what that meant, and my mom's a breast cancer survivor, and so that just meant like hashtag like I want to fight, I want to fight, let's go. And so they like I didn't need any more like blood or life saving actions to continue to recover. And so that recovery was a very, very long journey because of all the injuries, but that was like the first step into recovery.
Yeah. So, what was your first clear memory? Like, what did the doctors tell you when you finally, got your bearings under you?
I remember so when I wasn't on so much pain medicine that I was just knocked out. I remember laying in the hospital bed and waking up, and my mom was there, and I woke up and I just asked her where I was, and she was like, "You're in the hospital. You were in a really bad accident." And she's like choking back tears because what I didn't know is this was like the hundredth, the thousandth time that she's told me this, but because of the brain injury, I wasn't like clicking save and understanding what it meant.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I like it clicked save, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like my leg is gone. And I asked her, I was like, well, how long have I been here? And she was like, you've been here for 6 weeks. And I was like, well, what the hell have I been doing? I'm like, 6 weeks? That's like a lot of time. Like, I should have something to show for it. Like, and she just was like, what do you mean? Like, you've been a little busy, fighting for your life. And she's like, well, let's get you up, let's get you cleaned. Like I got life flighted to do rehab here in Spokane because my accident was in Sun Valley, Idaho. And so my husband moved us over so that we could get some more support from our family during that time because there's just so many unknowns that, was I going to recover? How long was the recovery going to take? Was it going to be in the hospital for a couple more months? We just didn't know. And so we moved over to Spokane. But before I went up to ICU, I was pushing my own wheelchair, and they just looked at me like I was a ghost. And they just like, and I just was like, why do people keep looking at me? Freaking weird. But it was because like there was no way I should have survived, let alone like been awake pushing my own wheelchair talking to nurses.
Yeah.
That just wasn't in any of the diagnosis. Like it just wasn't in the anything.
Yeah.
And so they're just looking at me like I'm a ghost. And I'm just like, I don't know who they are, to be completely honest. Like they've worked like, they've broken their backs to take care of me and I was a monster patient. I was ripping out IVs, I was ripping out feeding tubes. It took a lot to just keep me still.
Yeah.
And
Like your whole life.
like my whole
Yeah.
life, yeah, it was super powered in the hospital when you're not supposed to move anything because everything was broken.
Yeah.
But I like said goodbye. I said my goodbye to all my nurses down in Boise, and the couple doctors that were there, and we made our journey to Spokane, back to my hometown, which I was completely distraught that I like couldn't get away from Spokane because growing
Yeah.
up I just was like, as soon as I'm ready, I'm I'm going to leave. Like, I'm done, and
Hmm.
I don't feel that way now. But
Yeah, yeah. You right back where you were before.
yeah, yeah. And so I did rehab, inpatient rehab for only 2 weeks, and which is like
Real quick.
I they should have kept me a little bit longer to be honest,
Mhm.
but and it was rehab like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and like recreational therapy.
What was like a
And so I
day
had to
in the
re
life? What was so? Oh, sorry. Did you have something else?
no, no, go ahead.
What was like a day in the life of a rehab day while you were in inpatient?
So a day in the life, I would wake up, they would wake me up in the middle of the night to take my blood. And just I can't even remember what they were tracking, but they were literally tracking everything because I had intestinal surgery, I had my spleen out and appendix just for good measure, and I had fractures in my like spine and pelvis, and with a brain injury you're just like want to make sure that everything is working right and they're not missing anything. So I got my blood taken in the middle of the night, and then I'd wake up and this, I can't even remember his name, but he was like, he would come and take my food order for the day, and I was the happiest to see him because I was starving because I was like 97 pounds and I weigh like 130 now.
Yeah.
So, and one for my accident and stuff. So I just was like just skin and bones and just starving.
You like barely ate
And
for
so
6 weeks, 8 weeks probably. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I was happy to see him. And so he would take my order, and then I would start with like occupational therapy for an hour. They would come in, we do, or I would go out to a different room to do occupational therapy, and that was everything from like learning how to get dressed again to learning how to like kind of grocery shop in the fake grocery store that they had
Yeah.
there. So
Oh.
and learning how to like pick up objects and place them down and working that coordination like on both sides because I really struggled with my left side because of my brain injury impacted that side a little bit more.
Hmm.
And then I would do physical therapy, and that was like pretty, I couldn't put any weight on my feet for about 3 months because of my fractures in my pelvis. And so that was, I'd go to the gym and we do exercises just to work core strength and balance and just getting the body moving again. And so that was my favorite. And then speech therapy is very interesting because it was not what I thought it was. Speech therapy is like more than just speaking, but going back into your like cognitive processes. And
Okay.
so how you're thinking through problem solving and just where the holes in your cognitive function are and working that. And
So
then recreational therapy.
what's an example of like how they helped you with that?
So it would be like word problems. Like
Uh,
if you think about your like fifth grade word problem, and it would be like a math problem, and it would like, Joey has five apples,
mhm,
those kind of problems,
mhm.
and I would have to solve it. And like I couldn't do it. And
Wow.
I was just like, wow, this is so embarrassing. Like I knew something was wrong, and that's like very abnormal for someone with a brain injury because usually the awareness of something being wrong isn't there. But I
Hmm.
just was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And I couldn't, there was like puzzles too, so like tech kind of things. And I just graduated with a fine art degree, and so to not being able to imagine how shapes fit together in my brain was just alarming. And then they'd give me like a pen to write my name, and it like felt like I've never written my name in my life, and it didn't look like my handwriting, and I just was like, oh, like
Hmm.
I was so scared and like honestly so embarrassed
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, but it was normal for someone in your situation.
Yeah, that was completely normal.
So
So
for
I just felt so
that went on
exposed.
for a couple weeks, right? You said that was 2 weeks.
That was 2 weeks.
And then you started outpatient, I assume, right?
Yeah, continued with outpatient. I only did like 2 sessions of outpatient occupational therapy and kept with outpatient physical therapy for like a couple months, I think.
Mm-hmm. How was it
And I
getting,
just,
yeah. How was it getting used to your prosthetic?
well, that was, so I had to wait I had to wait a few months to put weight on my feet. And
Okay.
I, my sound side, so the side that wasn't amputated, was absolutely crushed too. So I had that side had to,
Heal.
needed a lot more recovery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I, I remember those first steps in a prosthetic, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is. I was like, I'm like, I can do it. It will get there. You know what? Like, it will be fine. And I went to my old gymnastics club, and I would just do laps around the floor with my walker
Mm-hmm.
to get comfortable, to get just to do anything I could to like speed up the process.
Yeah. And you wanted to be in a familiar place, I guess. Like you went to your old gymnastics spot. Yeah. So you just
And
walked around.
soft leg, soft
Oh,
floor. Like
yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna fall. Might as well be soft.
Did you fall? Did you end up falling a lot?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I fell so many times.
Uh,
I still fall like quite a bit. Like, well, not quite a bit, but
well, you went to the Paralympics, so I'm sure you're not too bad.
no. I'm
Yeah.
like, and a running leg is like a whole other thing, because it's like, look, you can't be scared to fall if you're an above knee amputee, because it's gonna happen. You just got to get back up.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
where did what year are we in at this point? Is this like 20, when is this?
this is 2017.
2017. All right.
So the end of 2017, like I got my first prosthetic a couple days before Christmas. So that was that's exactly what I needed at that time.
Hmm.
And I I have a lot of like post traumatic amnesia through like the first like 2 years post accident. And I I just wanted to get back to my life. I just wanted to get back to me. I just wanted to like put my life together and like act like nothing happened in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so that's like what I did. I I started working in January of 2018, which is just wild. But I just needed something to like do,
Yeah.
like
Fill your time.
I didn't work full time, just part time. And I
Which
started to like
what job was it? Sorry.
that. It was my old job. I was like the office manager for the gymnastics club
Oh, cool.
I competed for. So it was familiar enough that I could be confident in it and just kind of piece everything together, because I've done it before.
Hmm.
And so I started that, and I started to go back to the gym. And I really really struggled emotionally and mentally. And I just was like so frustrated with myself, because I just like because I just was frustrated. I just was like, this is not fair. Like, I didn't want this. Like, why? Like, just very like internally focused of like, why me?
Yeah.
Which is was not very helpful. Like, my marriage was on the rocks. We like were separated for a while. And like, I just didn't want to be a burden to anybody. I just wanted to like isolate what had happened to me and not have it affect anybody else.
Yeah.
And in turn, it like affected everyone in a not so good way for a long time, because I just wasn't right with myself, and I was mad and I was angry, and I just wasn't processing any of that.
And they probably wanted to help you too, and you just felt like you were being a burden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just was like, no, I don't need your help. Like, I'm Miss Independent. I like save yourself, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, so I mean, wait, this just popped in my head though. Like, did I hope you like sued a Honda, right? Like for the
oh,
car
it,
malfunctioning.
this. The car was too damaged to prove the timeline of things.
What?
Yeah.
How is that? How can they even say that? Oh, that's
I,
insane.
yeah.
Ah, jeez. And what happened? So what was it? Like the brakes just you couldn't hit the brakes or like the steering just started turning on its own?
My my front tire blew, but it was brand new.
Yeah. Oh my God. So
So
crazy. All right. I mean, let me get back to the timeline. So, you got your prosthetic during Christmas, and then you started that new job. Where does the Paralympics come into play? We have like 3 years in between, right? Three and a half.
yeah. So it took me about a year. So we're in 2019 now.
Okay.
And like my husband and I reconnected. We like started dating again and like moved in back in together. And so like my personal life, what was most important to me was now like solid.
Hmm.
And so having that solid, I was like, okay, like, I got told about people running with blades in rehab by an occupational therapist I had. And she talked to me about the Paralympics and she looked at my like sport history and she put that idea in my head. She's like, look, I think you should look into it because I think you'd really love it and I think you'd be kind of good at it.
Mm.
And so I revisited this at the beginning of 2019, like February, and I looked up Parasport Spokane and when practice was. And I just was like, okay, like if I'm ready to do this now. I had accepted the fact that I acquired a disability and there was a new path for me.
Yeah, you had like a
And
mindset.
yeah, I had to grieve what wasn't first. Like I I I just had to make room for grief first and make sure my marriage was good. And then it was like, all right, I'm ready to step in. And so I look into practice. I go to my first practice and I really struggled to have a good fitting prosthetic for a while. And so I showed up on crutches
Mm.
because I was on crutches for like 2 years. And I couldn't even make it across the gym floor without falling on my face because
Mm.
it was snowing outside and so it was wet and I slipped and for the first time no one ran to help me up.
They just left you and you get up on your
Yeah,
own.
they just left me. But I was like, thank goodness,
Yeah.
because it was refreshing to me because it was like, oh, they're not going to treat me like I'm super breakable.
Yeah.
And so I got up and my current coach, I just smiled and walked over and introduced himself and was like, hey, like, what's your name? Like, do you want to come like watch practice? Do you want to like do you want to jump in? Like, let's figure out what you can do right now. And it was just like, we'll just work with what we have right now. And it was just thrown in. And I just was so jazzed about how normal I felt.
Yeah.
Super normal. Like, oh, you want to see a leg? Oh, you can still do this. You can still do this. Like, let's do this. And it was just no brainer. And then I
Mm.
went and met the director after that practice, and she said the most scary, comforting thing. She's like, "We've been waiting for you." I was like, "Oh, okay," because they heard about from the occupational therapist also volunteered with Parasport Spokane, and I have an uncommon amputation. I'm like, there's not a lot of like female above knee amputees that are athletes and stuff, and so I've been like gum in a shoe, and they haven't been able to get rid of me since. And it didn't take long for like going through practice, and it was like about about six months, and I knew the games were in Paris in 2024. And being an art major, I've always loved Paris, and so it felt like it was meant to be. And I let my coach know that, and I just was like, "Hey, like I have my eyes set on Paris." And he's like, I think we can get you there. I said, okay. I didn't say another word about it. Like until trials, basically.
What were you like, two
And
years
then,
out? This is like 2019, you said?
yes.
Okay.
So it felt like an eternity. I was just like, wow, 2024. Like, am I even going to like make it that long? But, but then the games for Tokyo, or yeah, for Tokyo were pushed back a year.
Yeah,
And
COVID.
I was like, heck yeah, that's gonna open the door a little bit for me. Like I didn't miss a practice during COVID. I practiced by myself, and I made it to trials for Tokyo, and just trials did not go very well for me.
What were you
I,
doing? You were sprinting, running? What was it?
yeah, so 100-meter dash and long jump.
Long jump. Okay.
And I slipped out of my blocks. I slipped on my blocks onto like my face, and I got back up and finished the race. But like
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
that's a lot of time. So Tokyo didn't happen, and I was like, all right, like I'm gonna do everything in my power to like make sure Paris happens. And then I barely missed every like international team for world championships and Pan Am championships until Paris.
Oh, so Paris was your first like major.
Paris, yeah, Paralympics was my first major.
Wow, that's awesome though. You know, that's what you wanted, right? Yeah.
At the top.
What's a
It's like, well, learning experience.
before we talk about how things went in Paris, what is your like training routine look like for you now?
For me now, right now, my training sessions are split up into days that I'm running and days that I'm lifting, and then I have one active recovery day that's like Pilates, which I love. Um, and my running days are like broken into like working on tempo, and so it's a little bit longer runs, and but you're not as a high of a percentage of output, and so you're like probably 80% output. And then there's like fast days where you're working, either you're starting acceleration mechanics or your speed endurance, and so you're running max like 90-95%. And
Yeah.
then long days that are working, everything consisting of long jump. And so your runway, your approach, like your flight mechanics, your landing, all of that for long jump.
Is it pretty much the same leading up to Paris, same kind of training routine?
Yeah, yeah.
It
I've
wasn't
been
more
in this
intense.
training. Well, it depends. It depends what like phase of training I'm in.
Mhm.
But those training like 6 days a week has been the standard for a few years.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
how did it go in Paris?
Paris went well. I had a really good trials. I like set an America's record in the 100 meters, and like I broke 15 seconds in the 100 meters, which was like my absolute goal this year. And so with making an American team, like you have to put so much emphasis on trials that that was what we were focusing on this year, so that I would make the team, and then to like recover and taper again for games is just something I haven't done before. And so because I've not made a team until this. And so Paris, I walked in and I it was just a lot of learning for me to do, how to measure how many steps I'm taking a day, with like how I'm exerting myself to like do things like go get food, just the regular things. And I I ran my second fastest time in Paris, and I took sixth in the world, which is
Huge.
great. Not as well as I wanted to do, but like it's the athlete mindset. But I had a lot of wins, and then I took eighth in long jump.
What do you like more? Long jump?
Oh, I don't know. There's things I like about both. I like long jump because it because you get six run throughs, you get six jumps, and it kind of reminds me of like vault in a way. And so I like that for about long jump. And then I like the 100 meters because it's just like very intense and you just need to be all tunnel vision and like you just go.
Yeah,
And I just that adrenaline rush for after is like unreal.
more pressure in the 100 meter.
Yes, a lot like yeah, more you feel more pressure. Just I feel like it's more contained pressure because it's like all right, that everything has got to be as close to perfect as I can get it.
Yeah. Wow. So you did six. So what are you up to now? What is the next? What is it? 2028, I guess, right?
At LA.
It's in
LA
America.
20.
It's
Yes.
oh
America's
what?
hosting the
What?
Olympics and Paralympics.
Jeez. So I guess that's what you're doing, training 6 days a week for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and there's world championships in between, and so this year, world championships are in India. So
It's this year, 2025.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
and do you have to qualify for that too? Or are you already like
yeah. So
qualified?
they'll be a nationals, and they'll select the team based on the performance from nationals.
When's nationals?
They haven't announced it yet.
Oh, it's got to be like soon, right? I would assume it's like summer or
Probably
something.
like July ish.
Yeah. 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 All right. Cool. So that's what you're getting ready for. That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you like working at that job anymore or did you just quit that?
Yeah, well, okay, I've gone through a couple jobs. I stepped away from gymnastics just because it was something I needed to do, and I worked as a bench jeweler for a while, and so I was a goldsmith. And I
I
know,
don't
very
even know what a
random. My job,
goldsmith I don't even know what a goldsmith does.
like a bench jeweler, so wedding rings, engagement rings, necklaces, pendants,
What do you make? You
bracelets.
make them?
Yeah,
What? I don't even know how you do that. I don't know.
yeah, I know. I took a lot of classes in high school for it, and I would skip my other classes to go to my jewelry class. So I worked in that for a while, and then I have a degree in graphic design, and so I shifted a little bit more towards that just because it was easy to travel with track. And so when
Yeah.
I was getting more competitive and traveling more, I just needed to be able to work off my computer. And so currently I'm a marketing manager for an inpatient therapy clinic.
Oh, okay. That tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It all makes sense once you look back, it makes sense. But
Awesome. So you're living in Washington now or
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I still live in Spokane, Washington, and it's a different city than when I grew up. So
Awesome. So I mean that flew by. I was 40 minutes already, so we're getting towards the end here. We like to ask at the end. So say I know your situation was pretty extreme, but if someone got into a similar situation around the same age, maybe if you could talk to your younger self, what's some advice you would give knowing everything you know now?
I feel like I could write a book on things I would say about it. Whenever someone goes through something really tough, my first thing that I want to say is make room for grief because I feel like you can't move forward in the way you want to if you don't, really grieve first. And so that's something that I tend to always say. And then another thing is like lean into what you love because that if you lean into things you love, you'll have this reservoir to pull from, so that when things are not good or things are hard, like that love will be able to carry you through those rough patches.
Mm. And that's something you eventually learned, but you wish you did that sooner, I guess, right?
Yeah, just yeah, sooner or a little bit more gracefully. I don't know.
All right, Lindy, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
and
you so much
sharing
for
your
having me.
story with us. Yeah, of course. Do you have like a website or some social media people could follow you on?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and TikTok, but mostly Instagram. Lindy.Marcusen is just my name.
Okay, beautiful. So we'll throw that in the description. Thanks again for taking the time. Everyone else, thank you again for listening to another Fighter Heart podcast. We will see you again next week.